on, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Workshop Wednesday. It's Rayshawn, and today I'm here to talk to you guys about emotional management. First, maybe briefly defining what emotional management is, and then giving some brief suggestions and some brief tips on how we can achieve emotional management, or at least like improve our emotional management or emotional intelligence. And emotional management is definitely important now because especially during a time as stressful as this. I've mentioned time and time again, like it's extremely pivotal during a time like this because we're extremely heightened. Like there's a lot going on. We're under a lot of stress, a lot of duress. So it's very, very important to be aware of like what's going on with our bodies, what our bodies are trying to tell us, how we can interact with that. And it's also ultimately great to be emotionally aware because that can impact, our moods. It can impact our communication with others. Being aware of those emotions can really just begin to like change our outlook on life, change our outlook on the way that we interact with people. Emotional management is definitely necessary. So, just to begin, what exactly is emotional management? Emotional management is defined as the capacity to be aware of, control, and to express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathically. So, of course, it's easy to kind of like feel things and react to that immediate emotion, but emotional intelligence would kind of deter us from doing that. Emotional management would want us to kind of like understand what our bodies are going through. What are the triggers, as we mentioned last week? What are the triggers to that emotion? What's kind of going on underneath it? It's a lot more than just, I feel a thing and I do the thing. You kind of have to think about the thought that's kind of coming up. Think about those feelings. Think about where it's coming from. What's the origin of it? What to do with it next. What purpose is it serving? Those sorts of things. And it's really amazing when you are working to be emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent, really working to manage those emotions. It's not an easy task, of course. No one is, of course, a master of emotional management, myself included. Like I'll still struggle with, managing emotions at times, but I feel that I have like a great hold on it and I'm much better at it than what I was, in my younger days. It just takes some time. It takes some practice, of course. So if you struggle with managing your emotions, don't try not to get down on yourself. Try not to beat yourself up because as with everything, it takes a little practice. Like it just takes some time to kind of, get used to it. Muscle memory kind of deal. The more work you put into it, the more you practice, the more you're aware of it, the more you will improve at it. So, of course, it's emotional intelligence. It's also a social skill that can help you become more aware. It can help you be more tactful and understanding and handling your emotions. And the more you learn to like manage your own emotions, you can begin to like understand the emotions of others. And then through that, you can definitely improve the way that you communicate with them. Emotional management has a direct impact on our well-being, on our coping, on our relationship satisfaction, on our resiliency. Just a few things that can be impacted by emotional management. It's the ability to recognize or perceive emotions in oneself and others. It's the ability to utilize emotions to communicate. It's the ability to comprehend and regulate emotions. And it's also the opportunity to be open and manage emotion to promote understanding for self-growth. So I want to talk to you guys about like just some tips for increasing that emotional management. You guys can even like, comment on some ways that you manage your own emotions. Feel free to interact with our post at all times. But I love little quirky things that kind of help you remember um, what demonic devices, or so to speak. Speaking of devices, I'm kind of coming from like a movie, TV kind of thing when I think about these tips. For example, like, I just think it's good to have a mnemonic device because it can keep you aware. And, we're all kind of on these streaming services. We're Netflix binging, we're Hulu binging. So, why not use some type of device that will help us, remember in that regard? So with that being said, like I'll get into just 10 quick tips on, really working to manage your emotions and improving your emotional intelligence. Number one would be to power up, and of course it may seem simple at first, but it's also like the most influential skill that there is. For one, like you may not even notice in the moments, like if you select to avoid your emotions, you may not necessarily understand what's going on. You may minimize some of the feelings that you're experiencing. Have you ever had someone ask you, how are you? And you've been prompted to respond with fine, when all in all actuality you were not fine. It's like you don't want to inundate them with material, or like how can I kind of bog them down with everything that's going on with me when all they did was say, hey, what's going on, what's up. So sometimes it's easy to kind of just say fine, we have those built-in responses, but in all actuality, like it could be helpful to kind of express that, because through saying you're fine and you're not fine, what you're doing is you're disconnecting from your emotions, and that can become kind of a habit for you. Then if you're disconnecting in that regard, you may disconnect with people who are closer to you, you may disconnect with your loved ones in your relationship. So it's very important to make sure that you are just being honest with yourself. First, it's okay to feel things. It's okay to not be upset. It's okay to be vulnerable. That can also be the first big step in taking, taking that step to emotional wellness. Just first off admitting, like, I'm not fine. So that it kind of is counterintuitive to what is going on. Power up. You don't think about powering up as being, oh, I'm okay with being sad, or I'm okay with being down. Like that, we kind of look at those things as mutually exclusive, but there is strength in that. Like there's a lot of power in you being able to take control of your own emotions, or state that, you know what, I'm not fine right now. Like I could use some help. I could use someone to talk to. It's just very helpful, like to kind of take that power back for yourself. So number one being power up, just having the strength to say, hey, I'm not cool. I'm vulnerable right now. Number two would be to rewind. So when you are feeling kind of heightened emotionally and things are kind of going on, taking a step back to ask yourself, how did I get here? Look for those triggers. I talk about triggers a lot. Look for those triggers that contributed to those feelings. Did your friend disrespect your outfit and you kind of struck a deeper chord than what you were expecting it to hit? Or, are you angry at your partner asking what's for dinner when ultimately you're just a little stressed out from a long day at work, or you're stressed out from everything that's going on in the world? Understanding where your emotions are coming from and what evoked those is very, very crucial to help you understand like how to manage them. I am a big proponent of, when you notice your emotions, you're willing to kind of hunt for the triggers that are also there. So like if you understand, this feeling of sadness kind of came up. Like I was fine just 10 minutes ago. What happened in these last 10 minutes that made me feel sad? I know I inundated myself with the news of all this, pandemic happening, and I probably should take a step back to do something more self-care, working to improve my immune system, those sorts of things. So really working to take a step back. That's why we like the term rewind, rewind to figure out what it was, what was going on, what was happening for me, what was that trigger, why am I feeling this way, what am I feeling, taking that time to kind of really delve into what's going on with you emotionally. Number three is to fast forward. I said that I would keep it going with this kind of like movie, TV watching theme. So when we become emotionally heightened, it's extremely common to ruminate. And what ruminate means is to kind of like sit with those feelings, let it replay in our minds over and over again. We're brooding on it. We're kind of, may even get to self-deprecation from thinking about those over and over again. And it doesn't take long before those thoughts start to really entangle us and we become tied up in our own feelings. One tip for that would to be, understand, and, this is where fast forward comes into. One tip for that would be to think about, how will this affect my future? How will me reacting to this affect my future? Will it impact my relationships? Will I break something? Will this matter in the future? Is this something that I need to be and that's not to minimize your feelings or to invalidate, but sometimes we can have a tendency to be upset about things that may not be important tomorrow or in the next hour even. So thinking about that, really working to gain a perspective of what we value, being in tune with our thoughts and our feelings, looking forward before we can really return back to that present moment. Number four would be to zoom in. Improving emotional intelligence is impossible without self-awareness. So you have to be aware of like what's going on. You have to delve deeper. You have to kind of zoom into the moment yourself. What exactly are you feeling? Do you feel, are the feelings true to you? Are they someone else's feelings kind of thing? Are you cueing into the butterflies in your stomach? Is your heart racing? Is your jaw getting clenched? Is your face getting hot? Zooming into what exactly is going on with you. A lot of these experiences are more subjective, but at the same time, like tuning into those can really give you a key to like what's going on with you. Really being aware of the moment, delving into the moment, taking note of what signs are there for you. It can really help to be it's beneficial to like, that can be beneficial for helping you to be more aware, and more understanding of yourself, understanding your emotions, understanding where they came from. Number five, monitor the volume, and not your actual volume, like the volume of your voice, but kind of like, what is it that you're hearing? Who is it that you're hearing? What voice is it that's kind of pushing us to respond emotionally? What voice is that's pushing us to be upset or pushing us to be sad? Is it a inner critic voice? Is it, the voice of an old coach who, talked down on us when we were making mistakes? Is it the voice of a loving aunt who is cheering you on from the sidelines? Listening to those voices in your head and then determining where those connections are between your thoughts and your feelings. Sometimes we put ourselves on mute when we are emotionally keyed up, and like we can increase the volume of those around us. While that can be tactful for like empathy, it doesn't necessarily like broaden our own perspective. So sometimes it's good to key into like, what voice is mine? Like, what do I think about this? What am I feeling? So number five, monitor the volume. On to number six, we then want to adjust the brightness. And that's exactly kind of what it sounds like. When we are sometimes emotionally unaware, it's easy to get in the mindset of like letting the dark feelings in. Like, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling, down and depressed. And with those, it can sometimes invite the malicious friends that come with that. And I say malicious friends in terms of like the other negative emotions that may really key in with us. When we're mildly irritated, it's good to really monitor that, because that, just to go a little bit more in depth with like the malicious friends. Like if we're feeling irritated, it can easily grow to like agitation, that can grow to frustration, that can grow to anger if not corrected. So really working to be responsive with those positive emotions. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but sometimes when we are inundated with those negative feelings, it's really good to kind of counteract those with positive emotions, positive feelings. Focus on being grateful for what's in the moment. Focus on being grateful for what you have. Really working to like evoke feelings of happiness and fulfillment. So that was number six, adjust the brightness. Number seven, press pause. Pressing pause is always good because, it can be done at pretty much any time. Like we can't always necessarily take a full break and leave, which I'll get into next. But sometimes it's good to just, take at least a minute. What's going on with my anxiety? What's going on with my feelings? What can I do to kind of manage this right now? What am I feeling? Pausing to really figure out what's going on. Deep breathing could be beneficial for that. Counting, breathing in, slowly counting to five. And when we're breathing, of course, we can go back to Victoria's video from a couple of weeks ago where she was giving some very unique and some very good tips for breathing, some very good strategies for breathing. And of course, the best thing about breathing is we don't want to mouth breathe. We don't want to nose breathe solely. It's really the combination of the two. Inhaling through the nose, blowing out through the mouth, really smelling the flowers, and then blowing out the candles. That's how I always remembered it. Counting backwards is very helpful when you're taking that pause. Can really help you to kind of regain the strength and regain your bearings, so to speak. It can help with mindfulness even though it's brief, but really helping to kind of get your equilibrium back on track. Number eight, if the pause isn't enough, sometimes we just got to take a full on stop. Like, take control of our emotions, really working to, take a step back, figure out what self-care looks like for me so I can kind of chill out a bit. Because sometimes pausing isn't enough. Sometimes we do necessarily need to stop. Like sometimes we got to go for a walk. Sometimes we got to go get a drink of water. Sometimes we have to just ultimately shift our focus altogether, which can just give us sometimes the ability to like reduce that heightened emotional arousal. It's always good to take a time out, like, especially if things are becoming a bit more than what you can bear. That's a good part of emotional management. Even knowing that I have to take a break or stop, take a time out, like that's emotional awareness right there. I'm not in a headspace right now to do this right now. I got to go ahead and take a step back or else I might react negatively. Doing that is fine, and I think anyone around you should be able to respect that and appreciate the fact that you are aware enough to know that this is a bit much for me. I got to go step away so I can be productive. I need that clarity. I need to be able to function properly, and this isn't helping. Number 9 would be to turn off. Like you might find yourself, especially during like this time, like we're really on our phones. Sometimes like it may even feel that we're like chained to our phones, chained to our computers. We might find ourselves a little overwhelmed. So sometimes it's good to find that balance between screen time and you time. And what I mean by turning off is really turning off those screens, taking a time to disconnect. This is what one of my favorite artists, P. Diddy, would say as blacking out, like where he just would kind of turn off social media, he turn off his phone and just kind of like tune into his feelings. He wouldn't want any distractions. And I find myself doing that sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like sometimes I'll just take a step back. I need to cancel the noise of the world and just focus on what's going on with me. Sometimes it's just way too much smog and I don't want it. So use those moments to really like reflect on situations where you've needed to pause or stop and revisit with a clear mind. That can definitely help assist with like forming an informed perspective of how to go forward in the future. So turn off, really work on um, getting me time versus screen time. Number 10 would be to recharge. And, last but not least, to recharge. And that's, everybody needs to recharge. Everybody needs a self care regimen. Everybody needs a coping skill strategy that they can kind of turn to when all else is kind of not working. Relinquish your need for like energy draining situations or energy draining people, time consuming things. Like it's okay to embark on like your own kind of path and do things that work for you. It's not an easy one, but at the same time, it could definitely be worthwhile when you do take the step back to recharge. Our phones need to recharge when they're overwhelmed. Our computers need to recharge when they're overwhelmed. And our brain is just our body's computer. Like sometimes you got to take a step back and like shut it down, let it recharge, take some rest, take some time to breathe. Understanding like for one person that could be meditation, for another person that could be listening to music, for someone else that could be spending time with family. Whatever you need to do to recharge, do that. And that's also a part of being emotionally aware. Like I have to understand that it's okay to do things for me. It's not me neglecting my responsibilities. It's not me being lazy. It's not me being a procrastinator. Sometimes I just need to take the time for me in order to make sure that I am able to be like an emotionally sound, an emotionally intelligent person. I got to rejuvenate. I got to make sure I'm improving my well-being. So yeah, those are my 10 tips for really working to improve that emotional awareness. I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. I will definitely post some links for, you know, ways to better improve that emotional awareness, maybe even some more self-care tips and things of that nature. As you guys know, I'm a huge proponent of self-care. So make sure you are really taking care of yourselves at this time. Try to get a routine going if you can, a daily schedule sort of thing. I know that it's a tough time. I know that it's very difficult to be aware of your emotions and manage your emotions, especially during a time like this. But we got this. We're going to get through. I'm here if you guys need help with that. And I'll see you guys next week.